You can have the best technology in the world, but unless you make it relatable, unless you make it accessible, and unless you make it so good that people are willing to change, it's still going to be in the buzzword and kind of shiny object on the horizon. It's really hard for someone to estimate the correct set of the soft skills for a technical profession. Instead of putting a conscious effort to actually say what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve, I'm saying something like, let's get our ducks in the row. It quickly turns from investing into the technology that can become obsolete to investing into your people.
Welcome back to Talent Hunters, where we explore insights and trends shaping the global recruiting and staffing industry. Want to build talented teams that drive your company toward big goals and big growth? Then this podcast is for you. And now, let's join the conversation with today's episode of Talent Hunters, brought to you by HireQuest. Connect with us at hirequest.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vince Holt, and I'm the host of Talent Hunters. Today, I'm excited to have Vlas Lazun, the COO of Silicon Valley Innovation Center, with us. Welcome, Vlas.
Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, I want to get right to the ground floor of this. Could you briefly describe to us what Silicon Valley's mission is?
Yeah, so are you talking about Silicon Valley in general or Silicon Valley Innovation Center?
The Innovation Center, great question.
Yeah, so we in general, if go to the very ground level, we connect global players, be it from the business perspective, be it from the government perspective, to the best what Silicon Valley has to offer. And it's really evolved from being very much centered around Silicon Valley and technology to more changing people, process, and technology, but also looking outside of Silicon Valley, because innovation is not evenly distributed. You have hotspots really all over the world, and we expanded our mission from connecting to what Silicon Valley has to offer to more of everything innovative that the world has to offer. So that's our mission in the very succinct form.
So you come from a varied background, which
Yes.
is exciting to me from the standpoint you've tried a lot of different venues in the world out there. What drew you to this organization and this position for this organization?
Yeah, so my background, I spent the majority of my career on the Wall Street. I've been with the Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo Securities, and kind of always been between technology and finance, have bachelor in computer engineering, computer science, and master's in finance. So I always have had the scatterbrain of trying to put things together and solve really interesting problems. And that's really what it comes down to when you, both finance and technology, are talking really to the core value of solving the problem. There could be, some vanity metrics, if you will, about how fast our systems are or how good our finance trading department is. But in reality, there is usually a real business problem that either technology or finance to try and to solve. And that kind of led me into this educational/consulting space where I am right now. I can give you a little bit longer story, but I don't think anyone would be too interested in that.
Well, I think just covering, first of all, the ever-changing world of technology, the ever-challenging world of finance. Good Lord. In your job then, so I don't misunderstand it, your job is to work with organizations then in the Silicon Valley to help them bridge these two areas of technology and finance?
So I would say it's a little bit different, right? So let me give you an example of why companies come to us. So usually it is companies outside of Silicon Valley or organizations outside of Silicon Valley who come to us and they are looking for the innovation. And obviously every company I talk to, they all mean different thing when they talk to the innovation. It usually starts with something like, hey, my board chair told us that we need to be more innovative, and we have been in this business for 150 years. What does it mean, right? So that's kind of the first part about what is happening, the education, the exposure, the immersion into what is happening out there in the world of innovation. And that's where we come in. We provide our own expertise, but we rely on the companies in Silicon Valley. And as I mentioned, outside of Silicon Valley who are doing really cool, innovative stuff that is happening in that particular industry, or let's say in some particular technology. Everyone is talking about AI right now. So we connect in a lot of traditional players and government players to the companies all over the world who kind of spearheading that AI. So yes, we provide some basic foundation, but then we rely on the experts from all those companies, Google's of the world, OpenAI of the world, to actually bring a working perspective towards those companies. So that's the first part. The second part is the next step from it is networking. How do we do those things, right? How do we find the partners? How do we find experts? How do we plug ourselves in this innovation ecosystem, be it for the big tech players, be it with the startups, be it with the venture capital funds? How do we plug ourselves in? And then the third part, which I personally enjoy the most, is that company come to us and they say, you know what, we want to do AI. And I'm going to talk about AI because it's talk of the town, right? And let me know if I go a little bit galaxy brain on you. So if I need to give a little bit more details. But let me give you an example of AI. Usually companies come in and they say, hey, you know what, we want to do AI. We have a great technology team, we have a great data team, but we don't know how to do it. We can probably figure it out, but we're thinking about hiring consultants. And I usually say, well, you know what, it's a great way forward. But the problem that your traditional consultants bring is that you did not know how to do AI. You bring consultants who know how to do AI, that do AI for you, and then they leave, and you either stuck with them, or you have to you kind of in the square zero where you didn't learn AI. Now you have a product that does AI, but you still don't know AI, right? And we try to actually build capacity internally. So how can companies use their internal teams that we can educate, that we can provide subject matter experts from the leading Silicon Valley companies to actually build that capacity internally? And it could be AI, it could be customer centricity, it could be all of those other buzzwords that we actually bring a real business benefit using their internal resources.
So as I was doing my homework for this podcast, the term clean tech came up. What is your involvement, your organization's involvement with clean tech today?
Yeah, so I think in general, it is definitely one of the other talks of the town, right? Is that how do we actually go about that? Making our planet a little bit greener, a little bit safer, a little bit more robust, if you will. So that's definitely talk of the town, and we work on that on the two major categories. So the first one is that we expose different trends, different technologies, different startups, different companies doing something interesting to the big players. So let's say, I don't know, Shell of the world, right, can come to us and say, hey, you know what is happening with the world of the startups? We know how to drill oil, we know how to partner with people in our industry, but what is happening in the clean tech? How can you do that from that standpoint? So that's one, kind of exposing what is happening everywhere. And then the second part is actually goes into the, any kind of clean tech, ed tech, fintech, all of this, right? It all starts with the people. It's all starts with slightly different mentality, slightly different approach, slightly different engagement, if you will, inside your company. So and that's where we bring our own expertise and expertise of our partners to actually tell, okay, if you want to do more of this clean tech, let's say inside your organization, those are the 2, 3, 5 things that you need to consider, and we can build a map with you, a strategy and the strategical and the tactical map to actually drive towards this cleaner future, whatever that might be.
So that is one of the hot buzzwords right now.
Yeah.
But why do you feel that clean tech is positioned to be explosive in the near future?
Well, I think it all really goes towards, as I said, everything starts with the people, right? And one of my favorite examples that I usually give when I talk to the executives or to the entrepreneurs or to the government officials is that think about how do you want to change your people first. And I always give example of Uber and Airbnb, because what Uber did and Airbnb is that they actually went against everything that our parents told us for the 100 years. Never get into the stranger car and never get into the stranger homes, right? And we still do that. So that's kind of like that massive shift that really drives tectonic shifts. And the same thing kind of applies to the clean tech, right? Is that you can have the best technology in the world, but unless you make it relatable, unless you make it accessible, and unless you make it so good that people willing to change, it's still going to be in the buzzword and kind of shiny object on the horizon rather than the change. So the real exponential change would come not from the technology itself, but how bigger or smaller companies can force people to change, right? And hopefully that forcing people to change is something that people do it because it's more convenient. People go into the Uber not because they want to get into the stranger car, but because it's much more convenient than a taxi. So that's kind of my thoughts around it.
So let's take a couple of these buzzwords we just talked about: clean tech, AI. How is clean tech using AI going to surprise people working together?
It's really hard to say. I don't have a crystal ball, right? And that's actually one of the things that a lot of times people come to me and a lot of our clients and they say, hey, what the future holds. And I say, you know what, I don't know. And nobody knows. And if somebody tells you that they know it, they're probably full of butterflies, right? It's I come from finance, right? And if you could, with the sheer power of your intelligence, predict the future, we would not have a single stock crash, right? Because one of the smartest people working in finance, and yet every 10 years, almost like a clock, there is something unexpected happens. So the same thing happens to, again, clean tech, AI, all of those things, right? And I think that when you think about what are some of the changes that could be bringing, I think the biggest change that AI brings to the world, and then we can go into a little bit of the clean tech, it's just a different type of interface, right? I think that AI creates a very humanly interface that we previously did not have, right? And a majority of the cases right now, I don't even go to Google and try to Google something. I go to ChatGPT, I click that search button and I ask my question there, right? Because it's a much better interface than just trying to find some of these things myself. And it also provides a very great personalization. So I think that's where that benefit comes in. If you have some kind of the clean tech solution, but there is definitely a sort of barrier to entry for people to change their behavior or for companies to change their behavior. AI can actually give you a stool, so to speak, on which you can step and go over that barrier, because it can personalize it to you. It can make it easier to adapt. It can make it easier to track. It can make it easier to explain you how it actually affects, gamify it, all of this. So that's where I feel that the biggest benefit of this collaboration is between how fast and how effectively you can communicate with the people in a language that they can understand, and in the language that will be different between what they speak to me and when they speak to you.
So clearly you deal with technology all over there. I'm assuming the world. Is that correct? Well, what do you feel? And you're not going to have a legitimate, concrete answer to this, but you're interfacing with technology companies to help them grow, to help them refine their business practices to be better.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to pinpoint any specific companies here, but technology companies as a general rule, what do you feel is lacking in their recruiting practices?
It's a very interesting question, right? And I think that what is a little bit interesting is that there's usually a little bit of the misalignment between the recruiting teams and the technical teams that I have observed, right? Is that in the majority of the cases, and maybe some of the other non-technical, and I'm not talking just computers, it could be engineers, it could be chemists, it could be some of those others, but since we're talking about tech, it's really hard for someone to estimate, so to speak, the correct set of the soft skills for a technical profession, right? Because everyone, when we're talking about the technical professions, engineering professions, we always focus on the hard skills. But there is a very, very specific set of soft skills that are kind of like a next layer on top of the technical skills that recruiters a lot of times kind of skip, right? It's really hard for them to look into the soft skills that is a natural extension and sort of expansion of those hard skills, right? And so, like, for example, I'm going to give a particular example, is that you can kind of, rely on your technology team, on your team where you're placing, to evaluate the knowledge of SQL, let's say, right? But how do you actually evaluate the ability of this person to explain technology? How do you evaluate the ability of this person to communicate with the different stakeholders? How do you evaluate the full understanding of why technology exists? Technology exists there not for the R&D. It does not exist there for the sake of it. It's what kind of business problems we're trying to solve. And that's one of the things that a lot of times I see being skipped, is that you can have a brilliant engineer that do not fully understand why they do this thing, right? Because nobody's screened for it, but B, nobody actually educated them on. So effectively what you have the business world that actually generates the money, and then you have a tech world that generates the product. And they kind of trying to drift apart, and that's why you insert like product managers and program managers and all of those things, all of those layers in between, simply because you really drift them apart, and the cost of transacting of those two almost separate worlds becomes more and more expensive. And I think if recruiters would be looking for the people who can do this technology and at the same time, without any kind of interpretation, talk to the business in the same-ish language, that would completely change the environment. So that's my take on it.
I love what you're saying, and you're absolutely right, but I'd like to add just a little bit to that. The bigger the company, the more convoluted the hiring process gets. So the person needing a potential person to solve a problem for them, usually can't communicate exactly to human resources or whoever is in their company exactly what you were just saying. I need this problem solved. This is what I need specifically. Human resources says I need a project engineer. And that's what they share with the recruiters. It's valuable when the recruiter can talk directly to the person needing the problem solved. Do you find when you're talking to companies, it doesn't have to be just technology, do you find what I just said in any of those companies that you've had the opportunity to interface with?
I would probably take it even longer, but even higher, right, from that. I think one of the key problems that I face when I work with the executive level, even with the executive level, even board members who meet together and they talk to each other, they're really connected. They should be, right? But it is such a different world right now that we rarely get a space to think and to actually communicate. Right? And I'm going to give you an example. One of my favorite exercises is that when we think about strategy, when we think about expansion, when we think about recruiting, who do we want to have? I put on the screen on the board the list of about 50 words, and it keeps growing, that you cannot use. The words are like agile, world-class, customer-centric, all of those buzzwords that means everything and nothing at the same time. So it's almost like a curse that despite all of those channels of communication that we're surrounded with, we really a lot of times retreat into the corporate jargons and that boilerplate language that short circuits our brain. And effectively, instead of putting a conscious effort of to actually say what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve, I'm saying something like, let's get our ducks in the row. And everyone is like, oh yeah, getting ducks in the row, yes, great. But the reality of this is that what I meant when I shortcutted, so getting my ducks in the row and your ducks in the row, completely two different sets of ducks, it probably geese at the end of the day, right? And we just all know heads. We just had a conversation and we run away kind of in the different directions. One is looking for the geese. One is looking for the ducks. One them getting on the row. One them getting under the table. I don't know, right? But that's the corporate reality. So I think that lack of communication, that lack of intentional communication, is something that is really plaguing our corporate world right now. The bigger organization gets, the more connected it gets, the less information is actually exchanged that fully communicate the intent.
Boy, this is so valuable. Thank you for this. It's incredible. Now, there's two different types of people getting hired in your world. There's the full-time person. And as you said earlier, there's the part-time person that's coming in under contract to help, for instance, as an example, set things up with the AI programs. And you said it, and then they leave, and sometimes the company's left really not understanding how to continue down that way. So as a recruiter, for which I specialize, what could I say to help a company that says, as an example, I want to bring in an AI expert? What could I suggest to that company person? And it's got to be a higher up person, because human resources does what they're told to do. And that's not demeaning or anything. We're all in that position at some point. But what could I discuss with the principal that would help alleviate that problem down the road of that person leaving?
I think in general, and it's really common and really understandable in that world of the business, is that people think like this: I need a problem, I have a problem, I need a solution, right? So you effectively we need to have AI system. Let's bring 20 AI people who's going to build us and build that bot or system or whatever. So that's a good point, but unless what you said. So what will happen when they leave or they never leave and we're going to just keep paying them, right? So what is your ultimate measure of success, right? And I would say that if you want to actually maintain that, bring them in. But you measure success is not building a bot, let's say, or some kind of a knowledge tool, but actually making sure that your team can build and sustain and build and expand that bot after that person leaves, right? So again, it's just putting a little bit more thought into this, just a little bit more beyond like, oh, I have a problem, I need a solution, right? Just put like literally 15 minutes. Okay, how long? What is going to be the next step? How we're going to maintain it? What's going to happen? Can our team do it? And sometimes the question is, we don't want our team doing that, right? We want to bring the consultant on. They can build that tool, and we can just play with it or maintain it, pay like a little retainer to maintain it going. But a lot of times, it's just again, is this extra step. So maybe our KPIs are what we're trying to achieve is not just a problem to the immediate, not a solution to the immediate problem, but actually building that internal capacity. And it quickly churns from investing into the technology that can become obsolete to investing into your people. And that's quite a different mindset. And again, I coming back is that the biggest change is coming from the people. If you can change your internal people with the help of the other people, why not, right? Then you already scored, because maybe first time when they learn something new, they're going to be a little bit slower. But then when the next hype cycle comes in and the next things comes in, they will be much faster to actually adopt the new technology, and they will build inside them a culture that will perpetuate even if people start leaving. If people start leaving, new people coming in. But if you build that culture that is built around adaptation, that is built about reskilling, that is built about actual solving real business problem, you have this culture. This perpetuates no matter who is actually the carrier of that culture.
And what excites me about what you just said is something that you refer to a little bit in your background is you thrive on building relationships. And by doing exactly what you just said is how you sincerely build a relationship with that principle. Because you're not just problem solution, you're problem solution and beyond. And that's where you earn the trust. And that's what builds relationship. Very, very proud. Good job. Good job. So, Vas, how do you measure success beyond the traditional financial analytics?
It's a little bit, it's also becomes a little bit different from kind of the personal perspective and the business perspective. When it comes to the business perspective, I always say that any commercial organization does anything at all for three reasons only. It's trying to increase the revenue, so bring more money, trying to decrease expenses, so save money on doing something. And the third one that we all love is please the regulators so they don't close us, right? But that's really provides the clarity from all the vanity metrics, from all the buzzwords, is that why are we actually doing that, right? And if you actually bring it down to those three things, it's really easy to start prioritizing without any fluff around it, without any corporate jargon, without any, again, vanity metrics, without all of those buzzwords. It really helps from that standpoint. But when it comes down from the personal standpoint and measuring success, that becomes a very, very specific thing for everyone, right? For someone, it's like happiness, right? How do you do from that standpoint? First, I've personally found happiness in that edge of when you are going fast enough and introducing positive change fast enough, where it almost feel a little bit dangerous, right? Is that when you feel like, okay, we have it under control, we are going out there, but are we missing anything? Aren't we going too fast? I find the pleasure of like slight imposter syndrome, because that where I know where the growth happens, right? Because if you totally comfortable with everything that is being done, that means that you're doing the job that you already did and you're not really growing. And that applies both personally to me, but also to my clients. And I, from kind of trial and error, I learned that just dialing this speed a little bit, even if you do, let's say, one mistake or two mistakes along the way, it will get you further, much further along the line than you trying to dial it down and be completely risk averse. In some applications, it's unfortunately necessary, but you always try to just push a little bit harder, and realizing that it might not be the completely fail safe of going forward, but it just this inspiration, that what personally makes me feel alive and what personally makes me feel accomplished.
Last question. CEO or COO of this organization, what is your vision for the next 3 to 5 years for your organization?
So I think the main one, right? And let me just kind of walk away from those three major components that I said for the company, right? Make money and all of this, because who cares about the numbers? Everyone cares about people. So I think my vision when it comes down to the company is to expand really our presence throughout the world to the point that companies are more open to work with each other to move certain things ahead, right? I think that our world becomes so complicated that not a single entity can actually solve the problems that face us. So my kind of Uber role, if you will, Uber vision, is that if I can have people look around, see what are the great things that others are doing in the industry, and can build on that, that would be really dream come true. So I would say, that who people think more, who communicate more and partner more in the world of the business, that would be my vision beyond, getting filthy rich on it. But that's a different point.
Les, I've got to tell you, and from my heart, I'm inspired by what you had to say today. I really am. You're passionate about this. This isn't a job. This isn't, to your point, it's not about the bottom line. It really is about helping people, which help you build relationships, and it comes from your heart. Thank you so very much for spending the time here today.
Thank you for your kind words. I really enjoyed the conversation.